I stood before the heavy custom oak door of the luxury estate I knew so well in the gated community of Calabasas. The exhaustion accumulated during the cross-country flight back to Los Angeles vanished in an instant, replaced by an incomprehensible desolation. I slid the key into the deadbolt, turned it once and then again, but the door remained as immovable as a fortress wall. Convinced I couldn't have made a mistake, I tried again. But the result was the same. The door was dead-bolted from the inside. A vague unease began to seep into my mind. I had intentionally returned a day early from my business trip to surprise my husband Vaughn. During our 7 years of marriage, these romantic surprises had become increasingly rare. But I wanted to reignite the spark between us. However, the first surprise of the day seemed to be for me. I pulled out my iPhone and dialed Van's number. It rang long and nervous. He didn't pick up until the 5th ring. His voice sounded strangely rushed and flustered. "Hey, Sloan, are you done with work already?" "Well, I just got back. I'm standing at our front door. Why is it deadbolted from the inside?" I tried to keep my voice as serene as possible. There was a silence of several seconds on the other end of the line. In the distance, I could hear the faint crash of ocean waves and loud, upbeat music. Van was definitely not in a boardroom. My heart began to beat at an irregular pace. "Oh right. I'm actually in a highly critical meeting with a venture capital partner. I probably won't be back until late tonight. Grab an Uber and head over to your parents' estate in Pasadena for the night." "Okay. I'll come see you first thing tomorrow." His voice was dripping with deceit. Every word he spoke was a needle piercing my trust. "And where exactly is this incredibly loud meeting that sounds like you're on a beach?" I asked, noticing a cold chill running down my spine. "I'm at a summit in Miami down in South Beach. Look, my CEO is calling me over. I have to hang up. I'll call you tonight. Love you." He hung up hastily, not giving me a chance to ask anything else. Love you. How empty and nauseating those 2 words echoed in my head. I had heard them thousands of times over the last 7 years, but they had never made me want to gag as much as they did today. Feeling utterly powerless, I dragged my Rimowa suitcase back toward the community's entrance. I was about to request an Uber Black to my parents' house when Harrison, the estate security guard who was doing his rounds, spotted me and waved politely. "Well, Mrs. Sterling, back from your trip already. You're looking well." "Hi, Harrison. Yes, just got back." I forced a tight smile. "Say, Harrison, did anyone happen to stop by the house today?" "Wait, you didn't go on the family trip?" The guard looked at me, his eyes wide with surprise. "Yesterday morning, I saw Mr. Arthur Sterling taking your husband and the rest of the family to LAX. They were so proud, telling me they were all heading to Maui for a week to celebrate some massive news. There was a stunning young woman with them, too. According to what they told me, she was Mr. Vaughn's fiancée, and the big news was a pregnancy, so they were all flying out to Hawaii to celebrate. Mr. Arthur was over the moon finally getting a baby boy to carry on the family name. I congratulated him, of course. Every word from the guard was a sledgehammer to my skull. Big news. Fiancé, pregnancy, Maui, the entire in-law family. My mind spiraled into a chaotic, agonizing tornado of information. The curtain of lies meticulously woven by my husband and his family had just been ruthlessly torn down by a clueless third party. I don't even remember how I said goodbye to the guard. When I regained my senses, I was back in front of that heavy oak door with a terrifying determination in my eyes. I had to get inside that house. I needed to know the truth. I called a high-end emergency locksmith. My voice sounded so cold and resolute that it even surprised me. The pain and betrayal were slowly condensing into a dark energy, ready to destroy everything in its path. The storm inside me had only just begun. After struggling for nearly 20 minutes, the locksmith wiped his brow, ran my card, and practically sprinted to his van, as if he had sensed the suffocating, toxic air that was crushing me. A heavy metallic clack announced that the deadbolt was disengaged. I pushed the door open carefully and stepped into the house I had proudly called my home. The scent of white peas, which my mother-in-law arranged every week, hit my nose. But today, even that fragrance made me nauseous. The house was empty, but traces of a hasty departure were everywhere. discarded throw pillows on the restoration hardware sofa, a half-empty glass of Pellegrino on the marble island. My heart raced as I approached the gallery wall where we kept our family portraits. I froze. Right between our wedding photo and the pictures from our Aspen ski trips over the years, a brand new silver frame sat prominently. In the photo, my entire family-in-law was smiling radiantly at the airport terminal. My father-in-law, my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, Brooks and his wife Yvonne. He was right in the center, one hand on his mother's shoulder, and the other wrapping around the waist of an unknown young woman. She wore a triumphant smirk and a fitted designer dress that clearly outlined her swelling baby bump. They looked like the perfect, authentic, happy family, and I, the legal wife, was nothing but an unnecessary spectator, a nuisance. A violent shudder went down my spine. I covered my mouth with my hand to stifle a sob. Stumbling, I made my way into Van's home office and woke up the shared iMac. With trembling fingers, I typed in the passcode, our wedding anniversary. The moment the screen illuminated, the first thing I saw was a confirmation email for a 5-star luxury resort in Maui booked under Von Sterling. Guests, Von Sterling, Tatum Vance, Oceanfront Couples Suite. Duration, 1 clears throat week. A hot tear finally rolled down my cheek. I clicked into our shared iCloud photo stream, the very space I used to proudly show off to my girlfriends to flaunt our happy moments. And then true hell unfolded before my eyes. Hundreds of photos were actively uploading into an album titled Maui Family Celebration. Van feeding that woman bites of a tropical fruit bowl. My mother-in-law strolling down the beach holding her hand, looking at her with the exact same tender affection she'd reserved for a daughter. My father-in-law resting his hand on her belly, grinning with absolute satisfaction. The whole family raising champagne flutes. Vaughn and this Tatum woman seated at the head of the table. They were ecstatic, having the time of their lives, celebrating their ultimate betrayal. In their world, I had been completely erased. I clicked through the photos one by one, feeling my heart being shredded to pieces. There was a close-up of Tatum's face. She had sharp, predatory features and a smile that, while pretending to be innocent, was blatantly provocative. It was as if she were staring directly at me, mocking my stupidity and ignorance. There were short video clips, too. Animated laughter. My mother-in-law's voice, calling Tatum our beautiful new daughter. Van's voice promising that as soon as the paperwork is handled, he would give the mother of his child the life she deserved. Everything, that paperwork was me, an obstacle to be eliminated on their path to happiness, a problem to be solved. 7 years of love, 7 years of dedication, 7 years of sacrifice, it all boiled down to this horrific reality. I hadn't just been betrayed by my life partner. I had been backstabbed by his entire family, people I had respected and loved as my own flesh and blood. I slammed the iMac screen down. The sound echoed in the silent room. The truth, cruel and undeniable, was out. The tears stopped. In their place, rising from the absolute depths of my soul, a violent flame of hatred ignited. If they wanted a war, they were going to get one, and I would not be the casualty. When the initial shock wore off, a terrifying emptiness took hold of me. I slid down the cold wall, sitting on the hardwood floor, staring blankly into the void. I replayed everything in my head, searching for the red flags I had blindly ignored. Van's sudden urgent phone calls, his erratic business trips to the East Coast, the absurdly expensive Rolex. My mother-in-law bragged that a business partner had gifted him. They were all puzzle pieces of a masterfully orchestrated fraud, and I had been the only idiot in the audience who didn't know the script. With heavy steps, I walked out onto the balcony and took a deep breath of the cool California night air. The lights of the valley blinked in the distance, but to me, the world was painted in ash. Just then, I saw my neighbor from across the street, Vivian, walking her labradoodle. Catching sight of me, she waved excitedly. "Oh my gosh, Sloan, you're back. I thought you flew out with the family." I could barely manage a crooked smile. "Yeah, I had to come back early for a client emergency." Vivian crossed the street, her expression shifting to one of awkward pity as she lowered her voice. "Slow, please don't shoot the messenger." But the other day, right before they left, Beatrice came over for coffee, and she just wouldn't shut up about Van's new girl, going on and on about how gorgeous and charming she is and how she's finally giving the Sterling dynasty their long-awaited heir. She winced. And she told me your marriage had been dead for years. And it was only a matter of time before you guys battled it out in divorce court. I felt absolutely awful for you when I heard it. Anyway, whatever happens, I'm on your side. Every single syllable was a razor blade slicing the very last fragile thread of grace I possessed. The dam broke. They hadn't just deceived me behind my back. They had actively campaigned to drag my name through the mud and humiliate me in my own neighborhood. The woman I had catered to my mother-in-law had been broadcasting the death of my marriage while I was working myself to the bone for what I thought was our future. I mechanically thanked Vivian and walked back inside. The pain was gone, the broken heart no longer existed. All that remained was ice-cold rationality. They had backed me into a corner, which meant I owed them absolutely zero mercy. My first move was a financial audit. I opened the Chase app on my phone. In our joint savings account, where we had aggressively stockpiled over $400,000 over the last 7 years, a mere $850 remained. The transaction history was a bloodbath of massive withdrawals and wire transfers over the past 2 months, coincidentally aligning with every out-of-state conference I had attended. The beneficiary was an unknown LLC traced back to the name Tatum Vance. But the bleeding didn't stop there. I checked the credit cards. Van's MX Platinum was nearly maxed out with charges from Chanel New and exorbitant travel expenses. He was financing his double life with our money. With my blood, sweat, and tears, my rage hit its absolute zenith. They hadn't just cheated on me. They had conned me. They planned to strip me of everything I had built and throw me out onto the street with nothing. A tremor of pure disgust and hatred shook my body. No. I was not going to let them get away with this. I sat back down at his mahogany desk and flipped open my MacBook. My fingers flew across the keyboard fast and lethal. I began researching top-tier divorce litigators and asset protection injunctions in California. The grief had mutated into action. The tears were replaced by a meticulous, ruthless blueprint for vengeance. They had taught me a masterclass in betrayal. Now it was my turn to teach them about consequences. Night completely consumed Los Angeles, but I didn't sleep a wink. The sprawling estate had transformed into a sterile prison. I couldn't bear to be inside its walls a second longer. I packed a duffel bag with essentials and, most importantly, all the financial documents and hard drives I could find. Before leaving, I took one last look around. Our massive framed wedding photo seemed to mock me. Without a second thought, I ripped it off the wall and shoved it into the trash compactor. I needed a clean break. I drove aimlessly down the 101 freeway tiers, finally streaming freely. Eventually, the Range Rover pulled up to the only sanctuary I had left my parents' estate in Pasadena. My mother was horrified when she opened the door to see my wretched state at 2:00 a.m. She wrapped me in a fierce hug, her voice trembling. "Sloan, my God, what happened? Are you hurt? Where is Vaughn?" I couldn't speak. I just collapsed into her warm embrace and sobbed. My father stepped out of his study, taking one look at me before his face hardened into granite. Having spent 40 years as a ruthless corporate litigator, he knew instantly that something catastrophic had occurred. "Come inside, sweetheart. Tell us everything. Take your time." My father's voice was deep, commanding, yet profoundly comforting. Under the warm amber glow of the living room, I laid it all out. The dead-bolted door, the Maui trip, the pregnant mistress, the iCloud photos, the drained accounts. I started out sobbing, but as the story progressed, my voice grew sharper, more clinical. The initial heartbreak was crystallizing into pure, unadulterated fury. When I finished, my mother was shaking with rage. Good God, how can people be so utterly devoid of a soul, an entire family conspiring against my daughter? "Oh, my sweet Sloan, the hell you've been through." She wept, holding me tight. My father said nothing. He sat in his leather armchair, hands steepled, his eyes sharp as daggers. His silence was infinitely more terrifying than any screaming match. When I finally stopped talking, he unclasped his hands. Every word he spoke was a verdict. Sloane, listen to me very carefully. First, you have cried enough. As of this exact second, the tears stop. You did nothing wrong. They are the criminals here. You do not get to crumble. I nodded hastily, wiping my face. Second, my father continued, we are going to bury them. This is not a standard infidelity case. This is orchestrated fraud, embezzlement of community property, breach of fiduciary duty. Frankly, if we can prove the extent of the wire transfers, it's grand theft. Your father is not going to sit back and watch you be discarded like trash. But, Dad, what do I do now? Where do I even start? I asked, my voice still slightly ragged. The very first thing we do is retain a shark, not just a good lawyer, an absolute killer. My father locked eyes with me. This is no longer about feelings. This is a tactical, legal war. Do you remember Callahan Reed, Antonio's boy from your prep school days? He's currently a managing partner at one of the most ruthless family law firms in Century City. He specializes in high net worth divorces and asset recovery. He's brilliant, he's vicious, and he will not let them breathe. I remembered Callahan. We ran in the same circles in high school and got along well. He was razor sharp, witty, but notoriously blunt. I knew he had gone to Harvard Law and made a massive name for himself in LA. I am waking Callahan up right now. He'll be here before sunrise, my father stated. In the meantime, you go upstairs and sleep. This is going to be a bloodbath, and you need your stamina. My father's unwavering convictions and my mother's fierce love fortified me. I was no longer an isolated victim. I had an army behind me. That night, I slept in my childhood bedroom, enveloped by safety, and tomorrow at dawn I would launch my war. A war to reclaim my assets, my dignity, and exact my pound of flesh. It hadn't even been an hour since my dad made the call when the doorbell rang. Callahan arrived faster than anticipated. The lanky, sarcastic prep school kid I remembered had morphed into an imposing, sharp-jawed man in a bespoke Tom Ford suit. Only his eyes, piercing and intensely observant behind tortoise shell glasses, remained exactly the same. Good morning, Mr. and Mrs. Hayes. Callahan nodded respectfully before turning his gaze to me. For a fraction of a second, I saw a flicker of genuine empathy, but it was instantly masked by the cold calculation of a litigator. Your father gave me the cliff notes. Sloane, let's skip the pleasantries. It's not a time to mourn, it's a time to act. I need you to walk me through the timeline. Do not leave a single detail out. Sitting across from Callahan at the dining table, I recounted the nightmare again. This time, there were no tears, no wavering, just a surgical breakdown of the facts. I slid my iPad across the table, showing him the Maui photos, the St. Regis itinerary, and the screenshots of the drained Chase accounts. My father flanked us, interjecting with potential legal angles from his corporate background. As I spoke, Callahan typed furiously on his laptop. The more he heard, the darker his expression became. When I finished, he looked up, his gaze lethal. The exposure here is actually worse than I initially calculated, Callahan said flatly. Sloane, this isn't a standard irreconcilable differences divorce. This is a coordinated conspiracy to defraud you. They planned this out to bleed your community property dry before serving you papers. But they made a fatal error. They got arrogant and left a digital paper trail a mile long. Callahan spun his laptop around. On the screen was a meticulously drafted attack plan. Here is our strategy. We execute a three-pronged assault. First, the at-fault leverage. California is a no-fault state, meaning infidelity doesn't directly impact the divorce. However, wasting marital assets on a mistress absolutely does. The Maui trip, the Rolexes, the Chanel bags, every penny he spent on Tatum Vance comes directly out of his half of the estate. My heart pounded. I hadn't realized how much power the financial angle gave me. Sexy. And this is the kill shot. The financial front, Callahan continued. We need to prove Van siphoned community funds into hidden LLCs and forged your signature to open credit lines. You mentioned he's the CFO of Sterling Enterprises. We are going to demand a forensic audit of the entire company. I guarantee you he used corporate funds to buy this Tatum woman a car or a condo. If he forged your name on loans, that is federal wire fraud. But how on earth do we get that kind of inside information? I asked, my anxiety spiking. Right on cue, the doorbell rang again. My mother opened it and in walked my cousin Declan. He was in plain clothes, but the rigid posture and heavy boots gave away his day job, a detective with the LAPD's Financial Crimes Unit. Uncle Richard got here as fast as I could, Declan said, giving me a sympathetic squeeze on the shoulder. You holding up. Kid, I'm surviving. I managed a tight nod, perfect timing, December. We need your specific skill set, Detective Callahan said, offering a shark-like grin. First, I need a deep dive on a woman named Tatum Vance. Something tells me she's a professional grifter. Second, I need a comprehensive pull on all real estate and DM'd transactions under Vaughn, Sterling, Tatum, Vance, or any associated shell companies over the last 24 months. And third, if you have any CIS or contacts who can sniff around Sterling Enterprises' accounting department, deploy them. Declan nodded, pulling out a notepad. Consider it done. This is family. You'll have the preliminary DOS in 24 hours. Frankly, Van's reputation as a sleazebag was an open secret downtown. Only Sloane, bless her heart, was too loyal to see it. Declan's words were another jagged pill to swallow, but I needed the harsh reality to keep my edge. And the third prong, Callahan concluded. Slamming his laptop shut is psychological warfare. We strike fast, we strike hard, and we operate in total silence, while they are sipping Mai Tais in Maui. We will lay an inescapable trap in Los Angeles. When they land, their reality will be ashes. That morning, my parents' sunroom morphed into a war room. My father, the veteran tactician, Callahan, the commanding general executing the blitzkrieg. Declan, the intelligence operative, gathering reconnaissance, and me, the scorned wife, turned lethal weapon. The fire of hatred in my chest was no longer burning me alive. It was illuminating the path to absolute ruin for the Sterling family. The next morning, while I was reviewing an asset spreadsheet with Callahan, my phone vibrated. Caller ID VA. My stomach plummeted and a wave of nausea hit me. I looked at Callahan in panic. He held up a hand signaling me to breathe and leaned in close. Answer it. You are the clueless doing wife. Do not give him a single reason to panic. If you can force some tears, do it. Keep him talking. Put it on speaker. I took a deep breath, compartmentalizing my disgust. I swiped right and pitched my voice up, letting it tremble slightly. Van, honey, is everything okay? You didn't call me back last night. I was so worried. Hey, baby, I know, I'm so sorry. The VC meetings ran incredibly late and I was totally wiped out. His voice was smooth, dripping with practiced affection. It's okay. I forced a slight sniffle. I just miss you. Please don't overwork yourself down in Miami. Have you eaten? Callahan gave me a thumbs up, mouthing brilliant. I'm fine, babe. Promise. We're almost wrapping up the summit. I should be flying back to LA in a few days. He lied effortlessly. You're at your parents' place, right? Yeah, I'm here. The house just felt so big and empty without you. I layered on the fragility, playing the dependent housewife he loved to manipulate. Hey, babe. I was logging into Chase yesterday to pay the landscaper, and there's something weird going on with the joint savings. It looks like a ton of money was moved. I'm kind of freaking out. I dropped the bait. There was a prolonged, heavy silence on his end. I could practically see the blood draining from his face. Oh, right, babe. Don't panic. That's capital. I temporarily moved into a massive bridge loan for a new commercial development. I wanted to surprise you when it closed. The ROI is going to triple our liquidity in 6 months. You don't need to stress your pretty head over it. Oh, thank God, I exhaled dramatically. I thought we got hacked or something. Okay, we'll go crush your meetings. I won't distract you anymore. I love you. The second I ended the call, I slumped in my chair, utterly exhausted. Pretending to love the man I wanted to bury alive was worse than physical torture. Flawless, Callahan said, clapping me on the shoulder. He panicked and invented a phantom investment. That proves consciousness of guilt. He thinks you're completely under his control. We hold the element of surprise, so he'll drop his guard. My dad agreed. Exactly, Callahan said, his eyes narrowing, but now comes the dangerous part. Sloane, you need to go back to the Calabasas' house, his home office, his physical safe. That's where the killshot documents will be. How can I go back there? I can't be in that house alone. The thought of standing in that shrine of lies made my skin crawl. You aren't going alone, Callahan said firmly. I am going with you. Legally, I am accompanying my client to retrieve personal belongings and documents pertinent to a pending dissolution of marriage. It is 100% legal. Furthermore, I'm bringing a forensic data extraction tech. He's going to clone Van's hard drives, including the deleted partitions. He won't be able to hide a single receipt. The operation was set. That afternoon, Callahan, the IT tech, and I returned to the scene of the crime. Facing the ghost of my marriage was agonizing. But this time, I wasn't a weeping victim. I was transforming the exact site of my ultimate betrayal into the staging ground for his destruction. The air inside the mansion was stale and chilling. While the tech mirrored Van's iMac drives, Callahan and I systematically dismantled his office. Behind a framed modern art print, we found his hidden wall safe. "Do you know the combo?" Callahan asked. I shook my head, but then a sequence of numbers flashed in my mind. Tatum's birth date. I remembered seeing it on an HR form he had carelessly left out months ago, claiming she was a new consultant. My fingers trembled as I punched in the numbers. Click. The heavy steel door popped open. There wasn't much cash inside, but it was stuffed with manila folders, LLC incorporation papers, and promissory notes I had never seen before. The most horrifying discovery was a stack of commercial loan documents from a private equity firm. On the guarantor signature lines, my name, Sloan Hayes Sterling, had been clumsily forged. My vision blurred. Vaughn hadn't just cheated on me. He had attempted to saddle me with millions of dollars in fraudulent corporate debt. If his company went under, I would be financially ruined and potentially face federal charges. Callahan rapidly scanned the documents, his face a mask of cold fury. He began taking high-resolution photos of every single page. "Gotcha," he whispered. "Forging a spouse's signature to secure fraudulent commercial loans is a Class 1 felony. This isn't family court anymore, Sloan. This is federal prison. The Sterling dynasty is officially dead." We packed the evidence into briefcases and evacuated the property immediately. We had barely made it back to my parents' house and poured a glass of water when the front gate buzzer rang violently. My mother checked the security tablet, her jaw tightening. "It's Beatrice, your mother-in-law." My dad and I exchanged a look, then turned to Callahan. He smiled a terrifying, predatory smirk. He grabbed my iPhone, opened the voice memos app, hit record, and slipped it into my blazer pocket. "Showtime. Keep your cool and let her dig her own grave. The more she talks, the more she incriminates herself." My mother unlatched the front door, and Beatrix Sterling stormed into the foyer like a hurricane. Gone was her usual polished country club demeanor. Today she looked frantic and venomous. The second she locked eyes with me, she bypassed my parents completely and pointed a manicured finger at my face. "What do you think you're doing running away and hiding here? Who gave you permission to abandon your duties?" "Beatrice, this is my parents' home. Where else would I go?" I kept my voice eerily calm. "Don't you dare take that tone with me. I have never met such a useless dramatic wife," she shrieked. "Van told me everything. You sit around playing executive while he provides the lifestyle, and now you're throwing a hysterical tantrum over petty jealousy. You are not, and never were worthy of my son." My father shot up from his chair, his face flushed with rage. "Watch your mouth, Beatrice. You are standing in my house and you will not disrespect my daughter." "Oh, look at Daddy defending his fragile little girl." Beatrice scoffed, dripping with condescension. "Well, let me spell it out for you. Myvon has found a woman who actually understands her place. Tatum is gorgeous, compliant, and most importantly, she is currently carrying the Sterling heir, so you had better bow out quietly." She slammed a thick manila envelope onto the coffee table. "This is a post-nuptial dissolution agreement my lawyers drafted. Sign it. We are offering you a $1 million condo in Marina del Rey as compensation for your wasted youth. Take the real estate and get out of our lives. Do not force me to get ugly, that cute little VP title you have at the publishing house. I play golf with your CEO. I can have you blacklisted by Friday." I stared at the joke of a settlement agreement, and then at the arrogant, sneering face of the woman I had bent over backward to please for 7 years. Bile rose in my throat, but I remembered Callahan's instructions. I took a slow breath, squared my shoulders, and met her eyes. Beatrice, are you finished? If so, you know where the door is. I am not signing your extortion paperwork. I am not accepting your hush money. And as for the divorce, tell your son I'll see him in court. Excuse me. Her face contorted in absolute shock. She never imagined her docile, accommodating daughter-in-law would ever speak to her with such ice. As she inhaled to start screaming again, Callahan stepped out from the adjacent parlor. He held his own iPhone up, the red recording timer clearly visible on the screen. Mrs. Sterling, good afternoon. I am Callahan Reed, managing partner at Reed and Sterling Litigators and Sloan's retained counsel. Please be advised that under California law, I am officially notifying you that this conversation is being recorded. Your explicit threats of extortion, workplace retaliation, and attempts to coerce my client into signing fraudulent legal documents have all been documented. This will play beautifully before a judge. Beatrix's face drained of color, shifting from magenta to a sickly gray. She stammered, pointing a trembling finger between Callahan and me, before turning on her heel and practically running out the door, spitting a string of curses as she fled. The heavy door slammed shut behind her. I collapsed back into the sofa, my adrenaline crashing. Callahan stopped the recording and grinned. She quite literally gift-wrapped a harassment and coercion injunction for us. Now for the next phase. It's time we pay the future Mrs. Sterling a visit. That evening, Declan sent Callahan a heavily encrypted dossier. The background check on Tatum Vance was illuminating. She was 24, originally from a dying Rust Belt town in Ohio, and had dropped out of community college to move to LA. Her employment history was virtually non-existent, but her dating history was a masterclass in gold digging. She specialized in targeting wealthy, married, middle-aged executives. Vaughn wasn't her first mark, and if things went south, he wouldn't be her last. She was a professional parasite. But the most damning piece of intel Declan uncovered was the address of the luxury penthouse Vaughn had purchased for her. It was a $3 million unit in Century City, deed exclusively in Tatum Vance's name. However, the escrow and down payments had been entirely funded by Sterling Enterprises, corporate accounts logged as R&D consulting fees. Corporate embezzlement and grand theft, Callahan said, tapping the dossier. Sloan, I want you to go see her in person. We need concrete verification that they are maintaining a fraudulent secondary residence, and frankly, I want you to rattle her cage. I dreaded the idea. I didn't want to breathe the same air as the woman who incinerated my life, but logic dictated I had to face the reality of the nightmare to completely sever my emotional ties to Vaughn. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I'll go, I said firmly. The next morning, I drove my Range Rover to the Century City high-rise. Callahan waited in a coffee shop across the street, ready to intervene if things escalated. I took the private elevator up to the penthouse level. When the doors parted, I took a deep breath to steady my racing heart. But what I saw mounted next to the double doors shattered whatever composure I had left. It was a custom-brushed brass plaque that read, "The Sterling Family." They weren't even trying to hide it. They were publicly masquerading as husband and wife, building their glittering new empire on the ashes of my life. My blood hit a boiling point. I hit the doorbell hard and unrelenting. A few seconds later, the door swung open. Tatum Vance stood there, draped in a sheer lapel silk robe that proudly displayed her pregnant belly, one hand resting on her hip. She looked me up and down, her expression instantly morphing into a sneer of contempt. She was even more striking in person, a calculated, sharp, Instagram filter beauty. "Yeah, who are you?" Her voice was nasal and abrasive. "I'm Sloan, Von Sterling's wife," I said, enunciating every syllable. Tatum burst into a grating laugh. "Oh wow, so you're the notorious ball and chain. Heard a lot about you. What are you doing here?" "Van isn't around. He's busy finalizing the trust fund paperwork for our son." "I didn't come here for him, I came for you." Tatum arched a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "For what? To pull my hair? God, lady, get a grip. You should be embarrassed you couldn't keep your man satisfied. Do you honestly think an aging barren workaholic can compete with me?" Every word she spat was a stiletto to my ribs. But I didn't lose my temper. I stared directly at her stomach, then up to her eyes and smiled a terrifying deady-eyed smile. I didn't come here to pull your hair, Tatum. I came to give you a reality check. First, Van and I are still legally married. Your little brass Sterling family plaque out there is fantastic photographic evidence of his misuse of marital funds to maintain a mistress. Tatum's arrogant smirk faltered slightly. Second, I took a step closer. This penthouse was purchased using embezzled corporate funds. The IRS and the FBI will be seizing this property by the end of the month. As the sole name on the deed of a property bought with stolen money, I suggest you retain a phenomenal criminal defense attorney because you are looking at accessory to wire fraud. What? What kind of psychotic lies are you spewing? Tatum stammered, crossing her arms defensively. Her brazen confidence was rapidly evaporating. And third, I leaned in, dropping my voice to a lethal whisper. Do you really think that baby is your meal ticket? Don't be stupid enough to believe this makes you the new Mrs. Sterling. To me, you're nothing. But when the Sterling family finds out the actual truth about your little heir, well, we'll see how long you get to play house. Enjoy the penthouse while you can. The feds usually knock early. I turned on my heel and walked back to the elevator. I heard her screaming profanities behind me, but I didn't care. I had planted the seed of paranoia. I had shattered her untouchable facade. In this skirmish, I had drawn first blood, and the slaughter had just begun. Walking out of that high-rise, I felt bizarrely weightless. The hatred was still there, but it was no longer consuming me blindly. It was a controlled burn powering my next moves. The following morning, Callahan and I marched into the Century City branch of Chase Bank. Armed with my marriage certificate and the preliminary forensic data Callahan had compiled, showing gross misappropriation of assets, I demanded an immediate hard freeze on all joint accounts and any credit cards tied to my name or our shared trust. The branch manager hesitated, but once Callahan threatened them with liability for facilitating ongoing fraud, they complied instantly. The few thousand left in the safe accounts were routed into a solo account under my name only. That cuts the oxygen to the fire, Callahan explained as we walked out. Without liquid cash, he can't maintain his high roller facade in Maui. The panic will set in within hours. The next strike was surgical. Leveraging my status as the legal spouse of the CFO, Callahan hired an aggressive third-party auditing firm, recommended by my father, to serve a formal demand letter to Sterling Enterprises. The injunction demanded an immediate freeze and audit of the corporate ledgers for the past 36 months. The letter included a nuclear threat if the company board did not comply within 48 hours. We would file an emergency injunction in federal court to seize corporate assets pending an embezzlement investigation. We were attacking the very foundation of the Sterling wealth. As Callahan predicted, the fallout was instantaneous. That afternoon, while I was sitting at my desk at the publishing house, signing off on a manuscript, my cell phone began to vibrate violently. It was Vaughn. I let it ring until the last second, then answered with a deliberately groggy voice. "Hello, Von Sloan. Were you sleeping?" His voice was stripped of all its smooth hypocrisy. He was in a state of absolute sheer panic. "Yeah, I had a migraine. Took a nap. What's wrong?" "Honey," I yawned theatrically. "Sloan, something insane is happening. My MX is declining. The corporate cards are frozen. I can't even get cash out of the ATM. Check your accounts right now. Tell me if you have access." "Wait, what?" I feigned shock. "Hold on. Let me open the app. Oh my God, Van. The joint savings is totally locked down. It says administrative freeze." "Honey, did something happen with that massive commercial loan you told me about? Did they lock it for a security check?" I masterfully threw his own lie right back in his face. There was dead silence on the line. I could practically hear him hyperventilating. His phantom investment excuse was now a noose tightening around his neck. Yeah, that has to be it," Van stammered, his voice cracking. "I'll call my wealth manager immediately and sort it out. Oh, and Van, I got a weird email from the board of Sterling Enterprises. Something about a third-party audit of the corporate ledgers." "Do you know anything about that? An audit?" he shrieked, totally losing his composure. "I assume it's just a routine SEC compliance thing." I said sweetly. Don't stress yourself out on your trip. I'll hold down the fort here. I hung up and smiled. I'll hold down the fort. Yes. I would handle his family with the utmost care. I would amputate their lifelines one by one until they drowned in the swamp of greed they created. The counteroffensive was a flawless success. Now I just had to watch the rat squirm in the trap. Over the next 3 days, Van's calls became erratic. Sometimes he tried to sweet-talk me. Other times he demanded answers in a blind rage. I maintained my performance as the oblivious, concerned wife perfectly. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, our war machine operated with ruthless efficiency. Late one night, Callahan called me tone urgent. Sloan, we have a major escalation. Van is attempting to exploit California tendency laws. He just filed paperwork with the county to formally establish his parents, Brooks and Tatum, as legal residents of the Calabasas estate. My stomach dropped. Why? What does that do? It's a squatter's rights and community property play, Callahan barked. The deed is in your name, but it was purchased during the marriage. If he establishes that the entire family lives there, he can drag out an eviction for years in civil court. They'll claim it's the primary family domicile and extort you for half the equity to leave. We have to nuke this immediately. How? I asked, my anxieties spiking. By playing dirty, Callahan said, his voice brimming with dark confidence. Remember the forged commercial loan documents we pulled from his safe? That's not just fraud, it's federal identity theft. We aren't just going to block their residency attempt. We are going to put a hard lock on their entire existence. What does that mean? It means I'm calling your cousin Declan. We're reporting the SSN fraud to the federal authorities and the credit bureaus. We will freeze their social security numbers, pending an identity theft investigation. They won't be able to open a bank account, board a commercial flight, rent a car, or even process a CA at a doctor's office. They will become financial ghosts. The next morning, Callahan, Declan, and I marched into the LAPD Financial Crimes Division. Using his badge, Declan got us straight into the captain's office. I laid out the entirety of the nightmare: the embezzlement, the forged signatures on multi-million-dollar loans, the hostile takeover of my property. Callahan delivered the legal kill shot. Captain, the suspect, Vaughn Sterling, has repeatedly forged my client's signature and utilized her social security number to secure illegal corporate debt. He is currently attempting to falsify county residency records to squat in her primary residence. We have reason to believe the entire Sterling family's financial infrastructure is built on wire fraud and money laundering. We are formally requesting an emergency lock on their SSNs through the credit bureaus and an immediate warrant for bank fraud. The captain reviewed the undeniable physical evidence in the dossier. His jaw tightened. He looked at me with grim sympathy, then nodded at Declan. File the injunction, flag their socials with the feds. I want warrants drafted by Friday. Walking out of the precinct into the blinding LA sun, I felt a cold chill. I had just delivered a fatal blow to the entire dynasty. I stripped them of their fundamental rights to operate in society. Their luxury Hawaiian vacation was about to devolve into a bureaucratic nightmare they couldn't possibly fathom. While the Starings were suffocating in Maui, trapped with declined platinum cards and frozen identities, I decided to execute the ultimate psychological strike. A move that would burn their bridge back to reality forever. I want to sell the Calabasas' house, I told Callahan in his Century City office. Callahan nearly choked on his espresso. Sell a $4.5 million estate now. Right now, I said, my voice absolute. It's deed in my name through a pre-marriage trust. The county freeze stopped his residency play. They have no legal claim to halt a sale. I want them to return from LAX, expecting to walk into their fortress, and instead find a new owner changing the locks. Callahan stared at me, a mixture of shock and profound admiration in his eyes. You are utterly terrifying, Sloan, and I love it. It's the ultimate power play. You secure massive liquid capital and you obliterate the physical monument to his ego. You break his spirit. But selling a luxury estate in LA takes months. My dad, who was sitting on the sofa, interjected, looking concerned. I won't list it for $4.5 million, I replied smoothly. I'll list it off market for $3.2 million cash with a strict 7-day escrow contingency. In this market, a billionaire or a foreign tech investor will snatch it up in seconds. I want it done before they land. The plan was mobilized instantly. Utilizing my dad's vast network of real estate tycoons, word spread that a pristine Calabasas mansion with a clean title was available for a massive cash discount. Just as I predicted, within 48 hours, an executive from a Chinese logistics conglomerate made an all-cash offer. He needed a luxury LA base immediately for his international partners. The price and location were too good to pass up. A week later, I sat in a sleek escrow office in Beverly Hills, signing the final deed transfer. As my pen glided across the thick paper, a chaotic storm of emotions crashed over me. This house was supposed to be my forever home. It was where I envisioned raising children and growing old. But it was also the soil where the ultimate betrayal took root. By signing this paper, I was burning it to the ground. There was no regret, only the profound lightness of severing a tumor. $3.22 million cash was wired directly into the untouchable offshore trust Callahan had established for me. The bridge was officially destroyed. The Sterling family had lost their money, their dignity, and now the roof over their heads. They were effectively homeless. What would they feel when they dragged their luggage to that oak door and found a stranger living inside? The exact sensation of having your entire world ripped away from you. The exact sensation they gave me. My war was executing flawlessly. Every move I made pushed the starings deeper into the abyss. I should have felt victorious, ecstatic, but strangely, over the last few days my body felt heavy and broken. Every morning, I woke up violently nauseous. I had zero appetite and was plagued by a crushing fatigue that made me want to sleep for days. At first, I chalked it up to the extreme cortisol and stress. The psychological warfare was taxing. But my mother, noticing how pale and emaciated I was becoming, refused to let it slide. "Sloan, I am taking you to Cedars-Sinai for a full workup. I can't watch you waste away like this." To appease her, I booked a VIP appointment at a private clinic in West Hollywood. After drawing vials of blood and running several scans, I sat shivering in the plush waiting room. Half an hour later, Dr. Eris Thorne, a warm woman around my mother's age, called us into her office. She reviewed the iPad in her hands, then offered a gentle, glowing smile. "Well, Mrs. Sterling, congratulations. Your vitals are actually perfectly normal. In fact, I have wonderful news." My ears started ringing. "Wonderful news? What do you mean?" "You are pregnant, Sloan," Dr. Thorne smiled. "Right around 5 weeks. The gestational sac is perfectly implanted. The baby is developing beautifully. Given your petite frame, the morning sickness is just hitting you a bit harder. I'll prescribe some Zopran and give you a prenatal nutrition plan." "Pregnant?" The word detonated in my skull like a grenade. I was so paralyzed by shock I couldn't form a syllable. My mother sitting next to me gasped in joyous surprise, but as she looked at my hollow expression, her joy instantly morphed into deep terror. I couldn't hear the doctor anymore. My brain was a feedback loop of pure panic. A life was growing inside me, the byproduct of a fraudulent, rotting marriage. It was my child, yes, but it was also Van's blood. My immaculate plan of vengeance, my titanium resolve, it all shattered in a millisecond. What was I supposed to do? Keep it? Preserve the bloodline of the monster who tried to ruin my life, and be forced to see his face in my child every single day? But the alternative, a cold shudder racked my spine. It was my baby, my flesh and blood. I couldn't be that ruthless. I walked out of the clinic like a reanimated corpse. My hand unconsciously gripped the sonogram printout, a tiny black dot weighing 1,000,000 tons that rewrote my entire reality. My war had just become exponentially more complicated. I was no longer just fighting for my own survival. I held the fate of an innocent life in my hands. The path forward had plunged into pitch blackness. The days following the clinic visit were the darkest of my life. I locked myself in my bedroom at my parents' house, refusing to speak to anyone. The internal civil war was tearing me apart. My maternal instincts flared fiercely, desperate to protect the tiny heartbeat inside me. But my logic screamed that this child would be a permanent, unbreakable chain, linking me to the Sterling family forever. My vengeance was nearing its climax, but this baby was a massive complication. While drowning in my own despair, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown LA number. I hit ignore. It rang again and again. Finally enraged, I answered, ready to unleash hell on whoever was bothering me. "What?" I snapped. "Is this Sloane Sterling?" The voice on the other end was an older woman, growly, authoritative, and sharp. "Who is asking?" I demanded defensively. "My name is Estelle Sterling. I am Van's biological aunt." I froze. Van's aunt. Nobody in the Sterling family had ever mentioned an aunt. Estelle. As far as I knew, Arthur Sterling was an only child. As if reading my mind, the woman continued. "You're shocked. I get it. My brother Arthur severed ties with me over 2 decades ago. The world thinks I'm dead." "Why are you calling me?" I asked, gripping the phone tighter. "'Cause I've been watching your moves this past week," Estelle said. "I know about Van's little side piece. I know his whole family is in on the con. And you've played a magnificent game. Freezing the corporate accounts, burning their credit, selling the Calabasas estate out from under them. You're ruthless. You remind me of myself when I was your age." There was a deep well of ancient bitterness in her tone. "I'm calling because I want to hand you the nuke. The enemy of my enemy is my friend Sloane, and we share a mutual enemy, my brother's dynasty. Why should I trust a ghost?" "You don't have to trust me," she replied coolly. "Just meet me. I have something you need to see. Something that guarantees the Sterling family never shows their faces in high society again. Meet me at 8:00 p.m. tonight. The Silver Lake Loungeback booth." She hung up. I sat on the edge of the bed, my mind spinning, an arranged aunt emerging from the shadows to help me destroy her own family. It sounded like a trap, but I had backed them into a corner. I had nothing left to lose. I decided to go. At exactly 8:00 p.m., I walked into the dimly lit bar in Silver Lake. Estelle was already at the back booth. She looked to be in her late 60s, with sharp aristocratic features and a bob of silver hair. She possessed a terrifying aura of quiet power. She looked nothing like Arthur. As I slid into the booth, she bypassed the small talk and pushed a battered leather briefcase across the table. "Inside are the original founding ledgers for Sterling Enterprises," Estelle said flatly, "the company I built with Arthur. When it started generating real capital, he forced me out through illegal board maneuvering and stole my equity. This briefcase contains the paper trail of his offshore tax evasion, the shell companies he used to launder money, and the embezzlement that built his fake empire. Turn this over to the SEC and Arthur dies in federal prison." In shock, I flipped through the yellowed documents. Wiring codes, fraudulent balance sheets, damning signatures. It was an undeniable corporate death warrant. "But that's not the kill shot," Estelle said, her eyes flashing with venomous glee. She handed me a folded laminated document. I unfolded it. It was a genetic testing report from a private lab. Subject A, Arthur Sterling. Subject B, Van Sterling. Probability of paternity 0%. My brain short-circuited. Vaughn wasn't Arthur's biological son, exactly. Estelle smiled, reading my expression. "Vaughn is the product of Beatrice, spreading her legs for a tennis pro at the country club 35 years ago. Arthur found out, but he was obsessed with public image and needed an heir to Project Power. So, he claimed the bastard. But behind closed doors, he despised Vaughn. It's why he was so violently strict and emotionally abusive to him. It is the darkest, most humiliating secret of the Sterling family." Estelle tapped her manicured nail on the table. "I'm handing you their destruction. How you use it is up to you." I looked from the ruthless woman across from me to the DNA report in my trembling hands. The suffocating confusion about the baby in my womb evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, crystalline clarity. Estelle had just handed me Excalibur, and I was going to swing for the neck. The Sterling family's Maui vacation ended in absolute catastrophe. They didn't fly back first class on Delta. After begging for loans from bewildered country club friends, they managed to scrape together enough cash to fly standby on a red-eye Spirit Airlines flight. Their credit cards were useless plastic, their bank accounts seized. They returned to LA consumed by exhaustion, rage, and profound confusion. The first massive shock wave hit them when their Uber pulled up to the Calabasas estate. The familiar wrought iron gates were open, and a fleet of moving trucks was parked in the driveway. A family they had never seen before was directing movers carrying mid-century modern furniture into the foyer. "What the hell is this?" Arthur roared, storming up the driveway. "Who the hell are you people? Get off my property." The new owner, the tech executive, looked at Arthur like he was a lunatic. "Your property? You must be lost, pal. I just closed on this house on Friday. The deed is in my name." "Closed? Bought from who?" Beatrice shrieked, her face ashen. "The previous owner." "Sloane Hayes," the man replied bluntly. The name Sloane dropped onto the Sterling family like a smart bomb. Vaughn stood frozen on the manicured lawn, looking like his brain had completely snapped. His docile, obedient wife had sold his multi-million-dollar mansion out from under him and legally severed their only foothold in LA. Humiliated and effectively homeless, the Starings were forced to check into a grimy motel off the 405 freeway. The second shockwave hit the next morning. Arthur marched into a Bank of America branch, demanding to withdraw cash from a hidden emergency account. The teller informed him that per a federal directive from the LAPD Financial Crimes Unit, his Social Security number along with his entire family's had been flagged and frozen for suspected identity theft and wire fraud. No house, no money, no legal identities. The panic mutated into blinding psychotic rage. In the cramped, dingy motel room, there was only one target for their hatred: me. They knew I orchestrated this. "I am going to find that ungrateful and tear her apart," Beatrice screamed, throwing a cheap motel lamp at the wall. Van, who had been in a catatonic state of shock for 48 hours, finally snapped. He couldn't process that I had executed this masterclass in ruin by myself. He assumed some rival firm was backing me, but he needed blood. "We're going to her office." Van growled, his eyes bloodshot and manic. "We'll drag her out into the lobby. Demand she reversed the freezes and take everything back." What the Starings didn't know was that I was sitting at my desk, waiting for exactly that. The next morning, I arrived at the publishing house in downtown LA, dressed for a funeral. I wore a crimson Powers suit, the color of authority, the color of blood. I meticulously applied my makeup, hiding the dark circles of my pregnancy fatigue, projecting only an icy, impenetrable armor. I was no longer the victim. Today, I was the executioner. Callahan had positioned 2 plainclothes private security contractors in the lobby. My cousin Declan had parked his LAPD unmarked cruiser in the alley out back, his unit on standby. Upstairs in the executive glass boardroom, a projector was hooked up to my MacBook. Loaded on that desktop was every single piece of evidence. I had set a flawless snare and the rabid animals were sprinting straight toward the bait. Right before 1000 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was Declan. His voice was vibrating with excitement. "Sloane, I got the rush results back from the lab. A little parting gift for the grand finale." "What results, Dec?" I asked, my heart rate ticking up. Days earlier, after confronting Tatum in the Century City penthouse, I had tasked Declan with a highly unorthodox favor. Utilizing his badge, he subpoenaed the DNA of Vaughn and his brother Brooks from a previous minor DUI arrest on file and matched it to a stray hair follicle Tatum had left on the pristine white sofa when she aggressively leaned over me. It was borderline illegal, but I wasn't playing by the rules anymore. "Are you sitting down?" Declan laughed darkly. "The kid that Tatum is carrying, it's not Van's." I stopped breathing. "Not Van's, then whose? It's Brooks's." "His older brother." My jaw practically unhinged. The shock was immediately eclipsed by a wave of intoxicating, terrifying euphoria. This wasn't a standard betrayal. This was a Shakespearean tragedy. The beloved Mistress, the vessel carrying the sacred sterling heir, was the product of incestuous betrayal. The older brother was sleeping with the younger brother's mistress. The Sterling family tree was rotten to its absolute core. "Dec, you are a god." I whispered, a chilling smile spreading across my face. "Email me the PDF immediately." I dragged the PDF into a desktop folder labeled Checkmate. I had it all. The corporate fraud, the wire transfers, and the 2 most catastrophic genetic secrets in their family history. I asked my CEO and the department heads to join me in the boardroom for an emergency compliance meeting. warning them it involved a personal security matter that could impact the firm. Morbid curiosity packed the room. I wanted an audience. I wanted the Sterling's humiliation to be a public spectacle. At 10:15 a.m., the elevator doors dinged and chaos erupted on the executive floor. The Sterling family bypassed the receptionist and stormed the bullpen. Vaughn was leading the charge, looking deranged and feral, followed closely by his parents, Brooks and Brooks's wife. "Sloan, get your ass out here right now!" Juan roared, ignoring the horrified gasps of my colleagues. I stepped calmly out of the glass boardroom and looked him dead in the eye. "Is there a reason you are screaming in my place of business, Mr. Sterling? Don't play coy with me, you psycho." Beatrice lunged forward, raising her hand to slap me. But the two security contractors materialized instantly, grabbing her arms and shoving her back. "Why did you sell the house? Why are my accounts frozen? What did you tell the cops?" Van screamed, spitting as he yelled. I smiled, a soft, terrifyingly calm smile. "I think those are excellent questions, Van. Why don't we step into the boardroom and review the answers? Unless you want the entire floor to hear without waiting for a reply." I turned and walked into the boardroom. The executives sat in stunned silence. The starings, blinded by rage and confusion, piled in after me. Once the glass doors clicked shut, I picked up the projector remote and stood at the head of the mahogany table. "Welcome, Sterling family." My voice echoed against the glass. "I've gathered everyone here to present a short documentary. The title is Fraud." I hit the button. Clear's throat. The massive screen illuminated, displaying the high-res photos of Van and Tatum kissing on the beach in Maui. The room erupted in hushed gasps. Van's face went chalk white. "Act 1, Infidelity," I stated clinically. "My husband Vaughn Sterling utilized marital funds to finance a double life with a woman named Tatum Vance, impregnating her. Furthermore, Arthur and Beatrix Sterling not only facilitated this affair, but celebrated it, funding luxury vacations with money stolen from my accounts." I hit the clicker again. The screen shifted to the forged commercial loan documents and the Chase Bank transfer logs. Act 2, Grand Theft and Federal Wire Fraud. Vaughn Sterling embezzled community property to buy his mistress a $3 million penthouse and forged my signature to secure corporate debt. A crime that carries a mandatory federal prison sentence. Arthur slammed his fists on the table, spit flying from his lips. "You lying, vindictive, how dare you defame my company in front of these people? Defame you." I let out a sharp, cold laugh. "Let's listen to the audio." I hit play on my MacBook. Beatrix's shrill voice blasted through the boardroom speakers. "Take the real estate and get out of our lives. That cute little VP title you have at the publishing house, I play golf with your CEO. I can have you blacklisted by Friday." The executives in the room stared at Beatrice with open disgust. My CEO crossed his arms, glaring daggers at her. Beatrice collapsed into a leather chair, her legs giving out the color draining from her face as she realized she was caught on tape committing extortion. "And now for the grand finale," I said, locking my eyes entirely on Vaughn. "You were so unbelievably proud of your son, weren't you, Van? The grand Sterling heir." I hit the clicker. The DNA report Declan sent flashed on the screen. I read it aloud, my voice echoing like a judge handing down a death sentence. "Paternity analysis subject Brooks Sterling and the unborn fetus of Tatum Vance. Conclusion, 99.9% probability of paternity." The boardroom went dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Van slowly turned his head, staring at his older brother with a look of pure, unadulterated psychotic break. Brooks stumbled backward, shaking his head rapidly while Brooks's wife let out a guttural shriek and collapsed to the floor. You slept with her?" Van whispered, his voice cracking into a whimper. "You slept with Tatum, but wait, I'm not finished." I yelled over the ensuing chaos, my voice commanding the room. "There is one final secret. A secret Arthur has kept buried for 35 years. I hit the clicker one last time. The vintage DNA report from Aunt Estelle filled the screen. "Vaughn," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that somehow cut through the screaming. "That father who abused you, who demanded perfection, he isn't your biological father. Your mother slept with a tennis instructor. You aren't a Sterling, you are nothing. That was the kill shot." the string holding Vaughn's sanity together violently snapped. He let out a feral, agonizing roar, the sound of an animal being slaughtered, and lunged across the boardroom table, his hands outstretched for my throat. "I'll kill you." Before his fingers even grazed my blazer, the glass doors exploded open. "LAPD, get on the ground." Declan and 3 unformed officers swarmed the room. Declan tackled Vaughn midair, slamming him face first into the mahogany table, snapping handcuffs onto his wrists. "Von Sterling, you are under arrest for attempted felony assault, federal wire fraud, and identity theft." Declan barked, pulling him up by the collar. He turned to the hysterical parents. "Arthur and Beatrix Sterling, Brooke Sterling, you are all coming downtown for questioning regarding corporate embezzlement, extortion, and accessory to fraud." The entire dynasty was physically dragged out of the boardroom in handcuffs paraded through the bullpen, as my coworkers watched in absolute, stunned silence. The play was over. The curtain had fallen. As I watched them disappear into the elevator, I unconsciously placed a hand over my stomach. The storm had ravaged the earth, but I was the sole survivor. The incident in the Century City high-rise detonated like a nuclear bomb in Los Angeles high society. A cell phone video of the boardroom confrontations secretly recorded by an intern leaked to TMZ and went astronomically viral. Overnight, my revenge became the obsession of the internet. The headlines were inescapable. Publishing VP annihilates billionaire in-laws in corporate boardroom, exposes incest, fraud, and fake heirs. The media frenzy was suffocating, but unlike most scandals, the court of public opinion was violently on my side. They branded me the Iron Rose. I was celebrated for my tactical genius, my composure, and my refusal to be a victim. Women's forums exploded, dissecting my revenge as the ultimate masterclass in surviving toxic marriages. The Sterling family was universally eviscerated. To escape the hurricane, I requested an indefinite sabbatical from the publishing house and retreated to my parents' estate in Pasadena. I turned off my phone, ignored the book deal offers, and focused on the only thing that mattered, the tiny heartbeat inside me. One evening, I sat on the patio with my parents. My father, having just read an op-ed praising my legal maneuvers, set his iPad down and looked at me for a long time. "Sloane." His deep voice was incredibly gentle. "What are you going to do about the baby?" I rubbed my small bump in silence. My mother reached across the patio table and gripped my hand, her eyes shining with fierce love. "Whatever you decide, we are your shield. If you want this child, we will help you raise it. It is our grandchild, our blood. The baby is innocent in all of this." Tears, real and purifying, finally spilled over my eyelashes. She was right. The baby was innocent. The corruption belonged to the adults. I had executed my vengeance. I had legally and socially executed the monsters who tried to destroy me. I could not let my lingering trauma justify ending an innocent life. "I'm keeping the baby," I said, my voice steady and clear, "and I will raise him to be everything the Starings are not. He is my son, mine alone." My father exhaled a long breath, a proud smile breaking across his stern face. Spoken like a true haze. "You've become an absolute titan, Sloane." While I found my peace, another player in the tragedy made her final move. Tatum Vance, after watching the viral video and realizing the Sterling empire had been seized by the feds, didn't hesitate. Possessing the survival instincts of a seasoned grifter, she packed every designer bag she owned, liquidated whatever jewelry she had, and vanished into the wind. When the FBI raided the Century City penthouse a week later, they found an empty apartment and the brass Sterling family plaque shattered on the marble floor. She fled, carrying the incestuous child of a ruined dynasty, leaving the men who destroyed their lives for her to rot. A few months later, after the dust had settled, I received a certified letter from a federal penitentiary. It was from Vaughn. He requested a visitation. Callahan strongly advised me to ignore it, but I needed closure. To permanently seal the tomb of my past, I had to look at the corpse one last time. I drove to the Federal Correctional Facility on a gray, overcast afternoon. I sat in the sterile visitor's booth, staring through the thick plexiglass. A few minutes later, the guard brought him out. I barely recognized him. The arrogant, impeccably groomed executive was gone. In his place was a hollowed-out ghost in an oversized orange jumpsuit. His head was shaved and his eyes were sunken, dark pits of insomnia and despair. When he saw me, he slammed his hands against the glass, a pathetic glimmer of hope flashing in his dead eyes. "Sloane, you came. I knew you'd come," he rasped. I sat with perfect posture, my face a mask of absolute apathy. "Sloane, I am so sorry." He broke down violent sobs, shaking his frail shoulders. "I know words are meaningless now. I was a monster. I was the weakest, most pathetic excuse for a man. I ruined the best thing that ever happened to me. Curse me, spit on me, whatever you need to do. But please just tell me you forgive me." I offered a chilling, microscopic smile. "Do you honestly think my forgiveness alters your reality, Vaughn? Does it unforge the documents? Does it get your father out of federal holding?" "I know it doesn't." He pressed his forehead against the glass, weeping. "I don't even have the right to ask. I just needed to see you to ask the baby. You kept the baby, right?" I didn't answer. I just stared at him. "Sloane, please," he begged, sliding down the glass. "Protect our child. He didn't do anything wrong. He's my blood. Please, just let me be a father to him, even from behind bars. When I get out, I will work manual labor until I die to provide for you both." "My son," I corrected him, my voice colder than liquid nitrogen. "This child is mine. He has absolutely no connection to you or the Sterling name. You are dead to us." Van flinched as if I had shot him, but then slowly, agonizingly nodded. Okay. As long as you keep him safe, I accept my hell." He hesitated, looking over his shoulder at the guard before dropping his voice to a frantic whisper. "Sloane, there is one more thing. My Aunt Estelle, the woman who gave you the files." I frowned slightly. "You need to watch your back," Van whispered, absolute terror vibrating in his voice. "She isn't the vigilante you think she is. She hates our family. Yes, but she is a psychopath. She didn't help you out of solidarity. She used you as a torpedo to sink my father so she could buy back Sterling Enterprises' liquidated assets for pennies. Her cruelty makes my father look like a saint. Do not let her pull you into her orbit." Before I could respond, the buzzer blared. Visiting hours were over. As the guards dragged him away by his armpits, Vaughn kept twisting his neck to look at me, mouthing the words, "Watch your back." I sat alone in the booth, my mind racing. A warning from a convicted sociopath was hardly gospel, but it planted a dark seed in my mind. Who was Estelle really? But as quickly as the paranoia spiked, I crushed it. It didn't matter who she was. My war was over. From this second forward, I lived for myself and my son. The past and all its demons would remain permanently locked behind this plexiglass. A year later, I sat on the cedar deck of a stunning mid-century modern home, perched on the cliffs of Carmel by the sea. The crisp Pacific breeze tangled in my hair, carrying the scent of sea salt and misteri pines. The smog, the noise, and the toxic memories of Los Angeles were a lifetime away. I had chosen this quiet artistic enclave in Northern California to build my empire. A sharp, demanding cry from the nursery broke my reverie. I smiled and walked inside. Standing in a custom oak crib was a chubby, furious little angel. He had my huge dark eyes and my stubborn chin. I named him Rowan, wishing for him a life rooted in strength and unyielding freedom. The birth of Rowan had been the ultimate exorcism of my trauma. Watching him sleep, listening to his uninhibited laughter, I knew with absolute certainty that choosing life was the greatest victory of my war. With the $3.2 million cash from the Calabasas sale, I engineered my rebirth. I put half into a high-yield trust for Rowan, bought the Carmel Cliff House, and spent my days writing. I channeled every ounce of my rage, my grief, my tactical warfare, and my ultimate liberation into a memoir. I titled it Rising from the Embers. The book was a thermonuclear success. It hit the New York Times bestseller list in its first week and stayed there for 6 months. It became the definitive survival manual for women trapped in narcissistic abusive marriages. From a corporate VP, I morphed into a literary icon and a symbol of female empowerment. Using the massive influx of royalties, I materialized my final dream. I founded a nonprofit called the Inner Radiance Foundation. We provided elite legal representation, forensic accountants, and emergency housing for women attempting to escape financially abusive marriages. The foundation expanded rapidly. becoming a lethal sword for women who thought they were powerless. As for the Starings, the justice system ground them into dust. Arthur Sterling was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for tax evasion, wire fraud, and money laundering. Sterling Enterprises was dissolved by the SEC, its assets liquidated to pay off the massive federal fines. Vaughn was sentenced to 7 years for felony forgery and attempted assault. Brooks took a plea deal and got 5 years probation, destroying his career. Beatrice stripped of her wealth, her country club status, and her mind was placed in a state-run psychiatric facility. The dynasty was annihilated. I never thought of them again. One evening, the Inner Radiance Foundation hosted a massive charity gala at a luxury resort in Pebble Beach. As the founder, I was in a stunning emerald gown, navigating the ballroom and securing donations. Rowan, now a chaotic toddler in a tiny tuxedo, was being carried around by my mother, soaking up the adoration of the elite crowd. While I was reviewing an auction sheet, a deep familiar voice spoke behind me. "Sloane, is that really you?" I spun around to see a tall, ruggedly handsome man with kind eyes and wire-rimmed glasses smiling down at me. I blinked, my brain struggling to place him out of context before it clicked. "Kellen! Oh my God, Kellen!" I laughed, hugging him. "What on earth are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing, but I saw your face on the gala marquee," he chuckled. "I read your book, Sloane. It's a masterpiece. I had no idea you went through all of that. You are terrifyingly brilliant." Kellen was an old friend from my undergrad days at UCLA. He was the quiet, brilliant architecture major who used to bring me coffee when I was pulling all-nighters in the library. We drifted apart after graduation. He was now a highly sought-after, sustainable architect in town, designing a new eco-resort on the coast, and had bought a ticket to the gala the moment he saw I was hosting. We spent the rest of the night talking on the terrace, the sound of the ocean crashing below. Kellen was grounding. He didn't treat me like the Iron Rose or pry into the gruesome details of my divorce. He just looked at me, really looked at me with a warmth that I hadn't felt in a decade. Later that night, as I was tucking Rowan into his crib, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. "It's Vaughn. I'm up for early parole hearing soon. Can you send a picture of the boy, please?" "I have nothing else." I stared at the glowing screen. My pulse didn't spike, my hands didn't shake. I felt absolutely nothing. I swiped left, deleted the message, and blocked the number. That man was a ghost, and I didn't believe in hauntings anymore. A few days later, Kellen drove up to the Carmel house. He didn't bring extravagant bouquets or try to impress me with a Rolex. Instead, he walked in carrying a beautifully intricate hand-carved wooden architectural model of a treehouse he had built himself for Rowan. Rowan shrieked with delight, grabbing the toy and immediately dragging Kellen down onto the living room rug to play. I leaned against the kitchen counter, sipping my coffee, watching this brilliant, kind man patiently build wooden towers with my son. The scene was so profoundly peaceful, it made my chest ache in the best way possible. Kellen looked up from the floor, catching my eye. He offered a soft, genuine smile. "Sloane, I know your life is incredibly full right now, but if you're open to it, I'd really love to take you to dinner. Just you and me." I looked at Kellen and then down at Rowan, who was laughing hysterically as a wooden block tumbled over. I felt the ice that had encased my heart for the last 2 years finally permanently melt. I smiled back, the morning sun, streaming through the massive glass windows, bathing the room in gold. "I would love that, Kellen." A new day had broken on the California coast, a day devoid of storms, deceit, and war. There was only the endless blue of the Pacific, the warmth of the sun, and the quiet, absolute certainty of a happiness I had fought through hell to earn.